Right then, we're back onto the A5. It's been a little bit too long between videos, getting a bit of withdrawal symptoms. I've been on holiday, which has not helped, and the car's not really had much to be done on it. We're still playing about with coding issues on the facelift front end, which is painful, but anyway, we'll get to the bottom of that at some point and turn that into a nice vlog or whatever about everything to do with it. But anyway, the car, I don't know if we went into too much detail about it when we were at the drag strip, but it drove fine. The gearbox repair that we did seems to be holding up. We've had no problems with it. We were going to put a different gearbox in there if we had some more troubles. We're probably not going to bother now because we ain't got enough time to do what we're going to talk about now, and if we have any potential issues with the gearbox, because if we put a new one in, it's going to be a Gen 2 DL501 rather than the Gen 1, which is what we've got in there at the minute. So anyway, aside. Turbos. So as you can probably see, it's a big one. It's not ridiculously huge in the wheel sizes. We're probably going to be limited by the inducer because this is a 51mm inducer, which the turbo we've got on there at the minute has got a bigger inducer than that, a few mil bigger, 3mm bigger. So this is a 10 blade design, so it's just 10 blades rather than 6 plus 6. So you get a little bit more flow, and in theory for the equal sizes with these type of wheels, you get less pressure ratio. But the trim on this wheel, it's 51 at way in, 79 on way out. So it's a big trim, which that's where obviously you've got something going in small and coming out bigger, you're going to get a bigger pressure ratio from it. So like I say, for equivalent size you don't get the pressure. For this, with a big trim, you should get a decent amount of flow. We could try to find compressor mats for this kind of stuff, but Garrett, Honeywell don't want to let you have that sort of stuff even if you know the right people. So we're just guessing. We've looked at this turbo, we've looked at the wheel size, we've took it to bits and had a look at it, and it looks like it'll do the job. The VNT pack on this is really, really nice, really strong. We'll be able to put a lot of heat through it and not have any problems. The turbine side, it's a 35, so it's a fair bit bigger than the GTD 28s that we run. So this being a GTC has got the slightly different vane pack. It's better than the GTBs and not quite the same as the GTDs, but it's not just the vane pack that's different in them. The GTC to the GTD, it's just later generation. And what we tend to find on the GTD stuff, the vane packs are good, the turbines are just different shapes rather than more improved. So I think this is a good compromise. We have seen some brand new GTD 35 stuff on the market, but they've got some different reasons why they're not going to be good. So this is what we think is going to be the new turbo for this. If we inducer restricted, which I think we're potentially going to be, hopefully not until we pass 500 horsepower, see what happens. But if we can't quite get where we want to get and we're really running out of pressure and flow, then what we'll do, put a bigger wheel in there. We'll probably put something like a, 58mm inducer, 82, maybe a little bit larger X-juicer, so it'd be a 35, 82. See what that gives us, because we can put whatever we want in. We can have a custom-made wheel. We can literally create whatever size we want. It would be nice just to go bigger everywhere and just literally blow up the size of this wheel and just say we want it 10% bigger or whatever. But I think the X-juicer on this is already borderline a little bit too big for what we want it. So as big as we need it, we don't really want to go any bigger. So the main thing why I want to go to a big frame turbo, because once you start going from a 2260 and hybrids thereof, the main thing you're limited by are the housing sizes, which is good because they're light, but you're then limited by the centre section size, which means to get a decent sized bearing in there, the shaft has to be small, which I think on a 28, the 6mm shaft, something like that. This, we've not had the shaft out and had a good look at it, but when you're looking through the oil feed and return holes, you can see this has got probably 10, 11, maybe 12mm shaft on there. Probably 12, probably 10 should I say, but it's a lot stronger. It's going to be a lot stronger, so you're not going to be, a little bit of overboost is not going to kill it, a little bit of bad mapping is not going to kill it, because that's the main thing we have to worry about, that not everybody put these parts on the car have got the best tuners in the world working on them straight away at least. So you need to make sure that the parts can take a little bit of abuse before the mapping sessions occur. So this should be good. So we'll just get a little bit deeper into what we're needing to do to fit this, and then we'll sort of talk about this engine. This is a spare engine that we bought a while back just for little bits of mocking up purposes. We'll talk about that and what we think we can improve and what we need to do with that. So if you have a look down here, to start with, these are the standard cast manifolds, pressed steel manifolds should I say. They've got all sorts of weird chambers inside them, they're very strange inside. We are going to upgrade these to like a billet item, but we want to see where the limit is of this first. If we start seeing some weird pressure stuff going on in the exhaust side and the vanes are not doing anything weird, then we're going to get them sorted. So we've had to leave that standard and then come up to this sort of link pipe, which we'll try and show a picture of what a standard one looks like. It's like a cast iron piece here, but this, we've put a T4 flange on there with a Y piece to join both sides together with a nice flexible bellows in there. These quite a bit of flex in them, but this is solidly mounted now. Got a little bracket going up there as well, so hopefully there's not going to be any cracking issues. So that's this was a straightforward piece really. It's a bit of tube, some flanges and some welding. The difficult part, well, when Dan were trying to get all this in a position where everything had fit and not boxing yourself in, so there's no point making this fit if then you can't get the inlet pipe to fit. So he had to do a lot of playing about to get it to fit, but anyway, to get it where he wanted and then to make these parts. So I'd say the awkward part's done, but we've still got a lot of decisions to make. So another concern we've got is a boost outlet pipe. We've had this piece machined, it's got an O-ring in there to go onto it and a V-band clamp. We're potentially going to change that and weld the outlet just to go straight to the standard boost pipe orientation, just for fitment, ease of fitment. If we can't do that, we're going to have to make a full boost pipe that comes as part of a kit if we do sell this later on. So we'll see. We need to test it before we start getting too excited, so if it makes it easier just to do it this time, we have to do it again later, it's no big deal. So that's one thing to consider. The inlet pipe, that's 100mm. The standard 4-inch, the standard inlet pipe on the Audis is only 56, 57mm. So it's obviously a lot bigger. So we're potentially going to go to the standard airbox to start with, and then we'll make an 100mm MAF sensor and get an 100mm filter and try and make a little bit of a box to encase that in, see how we get on. But trying to put an 100mm pipe from here to the front is going to be rather difficult. I imagine the first time we run this, it'll probably not have an air filter on at all, but we'll see how that goes. So onto the exhaust side, this is the sort of thing that we make for like the BMW turbo, so a 3-inch tube will fit nicely into there and just weld around it, and then the V-band clamp goes on. Obviously, that's nowhere near that size. So what we're potentially going to do is just fit a standard V-band and make a flange to fit it, or if we have to, we'll just put this in the mill and we'll turn this down for a 3.5 or a 4-inch. I prefer 3.5, but 3.5 for a 4-inch V-band, like a standard off-the-shelf male-female one, and then we can just go straight to our tube. So that's one thing. That then, we're hoping to take it down to the factory flange at the bottom. So in theory, with what we've discussed there, your standard boost pipe should be able to make it fit. The standard airbox will have the option to make that fit. And then the standard exhaust part, also to a standard fitment, so upgraded from us or whoever, should fit. So then we've got the air going in, the air going out, the exhaust gas going in, the exhaust gas coming out. The turbo needs some oil. So we've machined this flange. It's going to have a nice O-ring in there, which we've not got them at the minute, and a screw-in adapter. Potentially we'll just make that a standpipe and then crimp it on or just clamp it on. So that's the oil return. That's going to go underneath like so. And then that has got to go down to this fitting here that we've made. That'll go into there like that. That should bolt on there, but it just goes in there. And so we're going to have to go from here up to here with the oil fitting. So that should be fairly straightforward. Obviously, there's no gearbox here, so we're going to have to come at a strange sort of direction to get it to where we want to get it. So that's the oil return sorted. Should be fairly straightforward. So then the oil feed, we've got a flange that we've got machined there that'll go onto the top with a dash 4 fitting on. So then from that we've got to come all the way down through here, this is where all the EGR cooler and all that rubbish normally sits. Obviously people fitting this is not going to be able to have any of that sort of stuff anyway. And then that's going to have to come from there down to this little bit. There we go. So they'll have a nice Viton O-ring on them. Oil pressure sensor just sat there, or pressure switch should I say. So we'll just have a nice braided hose from there to there. So that's all the piping considered for the turbo. So then, once all that's done, obviously the next thing we've got to be able to control it. Now this, being a truck application, had a 24 volt CAN bus type actuator on there, no use to us, we run 12 volt. So what we will have to do is somehow, this is a standard 2260 brand new actuator from a Garrett turbo. We take tons of these off when we're converting them for other use. So the plan we've got is to somehow have this connected to either the compressor side or the core, and they come up, and then this actuator's just got to move this lever. So it sounds easy, it sounds complicated if you don't understand. It's not going to be the most straightforward thing for us to do. The main thing is these actuators, you've got to have the proper tool or plugged into a car to get them to move where you want them. So we could do some faffing about. What we're probably going to have to do is get all this exactly where we want it, make sure it fits how we want it, make sure this actually physically fits in, because there's still a few bits of engine not fitted here, so we've not got all this room to play with. We'll put up a picture of what a standard engine bay looks like in a M1 without the EGR cooler, but you'll see there's not tons of room in this area to get everything in. So once we've got that in theory then we're ready to rock. So like we said earlier, we need to be over 500 horsepower as it is for this to have been worthwhile, in my opinion. See what happens. We've definitely got the fuel there. We are going to get to the point where we're either second guessing what airflow this turbo can give us, because we've got no data from Garrett. We've not got a speed sensor on the turbo, and even if we did, not having a speed sensor and not having a speed sensor and no compressor map, you're still not going to see whether you're pushing the turbo too hard. So we're going to have to just do what we normally do and just keep an eye on the exhaust pressure, the mass sensor readings, power on the dyno, air to fuel ratio, just sort of keep juggling around to make sure that we're not pushing things too hard. Obviously if you had a compressor map and a speed sensor, you'd have a maximum, you'd have a target pressure ratio, and if you can't meet it, or you're dropping off the edge of the map, we're in trouble. So if we don't make 500 horsepower, we only just make 500 horsepower and we're second guessing, we can't get it, we aren't getting too hot or what have you. We have got a set of reground cams to go in this, the same profile as what we run in the Arosa, the Citigo and all our builds, because those cams just work so well. So we're going to put those in as well. If then we still don't get where we want to get, I will try the bigger comp wheel. Hopefully we don't do the cams prematurely and it turns out that the turbo was the problem, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. So we've got the cams to do. Now while you're doing the cams, which is an absolute pig of a job on these because your timing gears are all at the back here, but luckily the casings do split so you can take the gears away. You take the cam gear away, take the cam girdle off, cams out, and away you go. While the cam's out, we might as well do the valve springs, because they're just sat there. We make a little tool for the 2 litres that should fit straight onto these to do them. Lifters, rockers, we just usually, if they're a big build, and especially on something like this, you might as well put brand new ones of these in. So we'll potentially do that at the same time. So we'll do the cams, valve springs, new followers, new lifters, or rockers, followers, whatever you call them. And then what we decided while we were there, one at a time, like we do on all the stuff that we're not breaching the head gaskets or causing us any problems, we'll do the ARP head bolts, which we've got a set that fits straight into this engine already. We've had those mocked up for a fair while, so we're hoping, like we said, we're probably going to be able to get, before the cams, I think we're going to be able to get 550 horsepower. Whether we can get more than that, putting a bigger comp wheel in, I'm not sure. I'm hoping, like I say, we can. If we do want a big comp wheel, we'll put that in first, then do the cams later. So we'll do the turbo cams. What we have noticed on these ones, so like I say, 550 if we start getting to the limit there, even with the cams. It would be nice to make 600 on a standard engine, but we'll see. Probably thinking ahead of myself here, but the limit where we are on the 2 litre engines, without taking the heads off, even with the cams and whatever turbo you want to put on there, and when I'm saying 2 litre engine, I mean the oval port 2 litres that run in the Arosa and the City Go and Steph Caddy van. That's the engine of choice for us. The limit where you are with those engines, we did a little bit more testing on RB for, we've gone a little bit deeper into some tuning settings, a little bit more boost. We changed the injectors in that engine, so it went from a 140. The block and the head are still totally standard, never been apart. We're just tipping 300 horsepower on that car now. It's probably about time we did a bit of a vlog on that car, because it does drive really nice. So we're at 300 horsepower from the 2 litre. So if you assume that everything's the same in the 3 litre to the 2 litre, you should be stuck at 450 horsepower. We're almost certain where we are now is not the limit of this engine. The A5 as it is now at 426 is where we track it. Usually that's about power it now makes 425s. We'll do a bit more testing before we put this turbo on, and we'll just turn it up a little bit more and put it in sort of a specification that we'd be happy for customers to leave on. And I'm sure that car will do 450 horsepower. So if we're saying 450 horsepower is the GT D28 limit, in theory 450 horsepower is where you should be the limit for a 3 litre, if you extrapolate from the 2 litre being 300 horsepower. So we don't think we're at that limit, so what we decided to do, have another little dig into these, obviously look at what we already knew, and what we've come to the conclusion is the valves in these are already bigger than the 2 litres, which obviously helps. The ports at this end, so the inlet side of the ports, is exactly the same dimensions as the 2 litre, but just physically looking at them, well, it's hard to see on the video, so we'll put a picture up, but physically looking at these, they're a little bit shorter. The angle at which the air has to turn in the port is less aggressive. So the 2 litre, if we were looking at the 2 litre, the port would probably here at this angle. So it's a longer sort of longer transition at a tighter angle, and the valve, just physically looking, is further away and more difficult to see. So the bigger valve, shorter runner, so to speak, and obviously the 1.5 times extra displacement. We think that's why we can make 550 plus horsepower from this engine without opening it up beyond doing the cams. Like I said, it'd been absolutely amazing if we can tip 600. This turbo definitely won't do 600 as it is, so we're going to sort of hit the limits. But it'd be nice if we can max the standard engine out with no cams with this turbo as it is. Put the bigger wheel in, maybe make a little bit more power, but then find the limit, put the cams in, find the limit of the engine while still having a little bit more turbo to play with, power potential wise. So this is the R&D playing around sort of thing that we're doing. You're sort of guessing all the way. This was always designed to be, I don't think there's an engine, even in marine applications and stuff like that, where the emissions are not as big a concern. I don't think there's a 3 litre V6 of this sort of platform that's over 245 horsepower, whatever it is. So we're delving into the unknown. If other people's done it and catalogue what they've done and show you, you've got a little bit more to work with. So hopefully this helps people understand what the limitations are and why the limitations are there. So we'll see. If we see 600 horsepower this year from this car, it'd be absolutely amazing. We're not far off the goals we'd had for the quarter miling. We wanted to get into the 11s. We were not far at all away from that. The gearbox again had a little bit of grief, just changing up again, doing whatever it wanted. But we'd have definitely got into the I11s. If we're doing all this extra work, we definitely want to be in the low 11s. So, and that's without nitrous. With nitrous, see what happens. But it's a big heavy car, so we'll see where we go. So the next steps for the car are already arranged. Like I said, the top end parts are already here. This is here. The only thing we'd be waiting on for this would potentially be the big wheel getting put in there. So how that fits in with a test schedule and what we've got planned, I'm not too sure, because the next event that we're out in the car, which is why we're saying we're a bit in a time pinch, we're doing the gearbox, is the Performance German Day at Castle Combe. I think that's on the 13th of July. I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, like usual. So that's only a few weeks away from now. So we need to get this on, tuned, happy with it. Obviously, bearing in mind, there's a lot of non-standard parts in here now. So if you have a problem, you can't just go to TPS or a local dealer and pick up your parts. Whereas when we went to Germany, it were only an hybrid turbo as such, and everything else were pretty much factory modified parts. So fairly easy to get us back up and running. So we're going to have that turbo on there, and potentially Danny will probably cry because he hates this sort of thing, especially because we can't enter it if we work here. Potentially the people that can initially enter the competition to win this car, because that's what we ultimately wanted to do when we first set out there. So I think we're getting to the stage where we can call it done, would be at that show. We want to open it up there, like the first people get in there at the show, they can look at the car, put the money where their mouth is, and enter the competition to win it. Probably going to be the same thing as we did with Jerome's, 25 quid or so for a ticket, and just sell as many as we can, because we want to turn all this effort, all this R&D into the products we're creating now, but we also, if we can capitalise on what we've done directly with the project, we're going to buy something interesting and carry this on, because we do think we're potentially going to, this engine weren't just here just for mocking up, we're going to build this engine. we did have it in his heads before we got the mock-up engine and before we had a good look over the cars and started digging deep into them. We did want to go further with this A5 than we've discussed already, the cams and stuff like that. But doing the heads while it's on the car, while the engine's in the car, and doing the bottom end mods that you'd want to do if you're doing the heads, because once you start pushing things hard, you need to strengthen other stuff. It's going to get very difficult. So we might potentially move on to another project to get further into that and have sort of an all-out, balls-out car that'll do everything we need it to do and more. Like I say, we might move to something else. So I'll just dig a little bit deeper into why these are difficult to do the bottom end mods. This is the bottom part of the sump, which cannot be removed while the engine's in the car. You've got to completely strip the engine out to do it. Now that, if you'd imagine, that's underneath like that. Half of your crank, sorry, it's like that. If you imagine that's underneath like that, your crank and your conrods, half of them are here. So you can't change the mains bolts, which is what we want to do, the ones that hold the crank in, and you can't do anything with the rod bolts, which we'd want to do. And if you can't get to the rod bolts, you can't get the pistons out, because you want to check that your ring gaps are okay. If you're going to be pushing it harder, you want to check that you've got adequate piston to valve clearance and put reliefs in like we do on the 2 litres. And you'd probably want to coat the pistons like we do on the 2 litres. Very difficult to do it while it's in the car. So we've already said, as far as our project and customers are concerned, not many people want to go to the full built engine route, and there's not going to be that in-between bit that we can offer for the 2 litres. Like we've got a couple of 2 litres in now. They want coated pistons and machine reliefs in them. We can just take the head off, sump off, pop them out, send them off, pop them back in, away you go. Your engine's going to last a lot longer. We can't do that with this. So the target market for these cars are not people that are stripping them out and trying to get every last inch of power. The easy bolt-on power, which comes with turbos, injectors, fuel pumps, cams, intercools, that sort of stuff, the meaty stuff, that's where we're aiming this at. So we're not going to go too far into that and try to come up with solutions for that, because I don't think they exist. So I think we've covered most things. If I've missed anything out, it might look like that when we start cutting it all together. It's hard to try and remember everything off the top of your head, what we need to talk about. But hopefully it's been insightful. Hopefully it stirs up a little bit of interest, because this turbo's big. I've not seen anybody fit this turbo to a car before. Whether that's a sign or something else, I'm not too sure, but we've seen a lot of turbos and we're happy with this. So yeah, hopefully people are interested, and yeah, like, share, subscribe. We'll be on the dyno soon. Thank you.